The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the Nova Society are those of our guests and panel members and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any institution any member of the Nova Society is associated with. The material information presented on the Nova Society is for general information purposes only. Reproduction or dissemination for the purpose other than education is prohibited without express written consent of the Nova Society. We'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society, and today our panel will be having a discussion about some interesting things that came up in the news today. Mitch McConnell is stepping down as the head of the Republican Party in the United States Senate. And the second interesting tidbit came out of Michigan from the recent primary numbers. Donald Trump, as expected, did win the Michigan primary. Now the question is, will Nikki Haley stay in the race? And the second issue was Joe Biden's numbers. 10% of the electorate voted undeclared. What does this mean to Joe Biden's campaign going forward? So let's listen in. So before we wrap up, we got about 15 minutes really quick. Breaking news. And I know this will make Scott Gershwer probably jump up and down. Mitch McConnell is leaving as the head of the Republican Party in the Senate in November. He is stepping down. Now, I'm going to assume he's also probably, I think he's got 1 or 2 more years left in his term, but he's not going to be the head of the Republican Party as far as the Senate is concerned after November. So he is stepping down, probably for medical reasons. The other thing that was in the news was, and kind of important, was 2 things happened in Michigan. Yesterday was the Michigan primaries. Trump won. So now the question comes down to does Nikki Haley stay in through Super Tuesday because the Koch brothers and their super PAC have stopped backing her? And the second thing that was really interesting was, and this is on the Democratic side, Joe Biden won 80% of the Democrats. 10% of it was split between the other 2 Democrats running, about 5% each, but 10% was undeclared. Now, there was that movement that wanted to get 10,000 people undeclared as a protest vote about what's going on over in Israel and Palestine. They got north of 30,000. Good news for Biden, bad news for Biden. What do you think?
So this is an issue that young people do care about, for sure.
Yes.
And it was obviously, this is a protest. It's something that Michigan has done before. Barack Obama was into 2012 was also faced a lot of undeclared votes in the primary, even though he was running unopposed, basically. And Michigan uses this to allow people to air their grievances. And I think that Biden should certainly, and I think he will take it seriously. I certainly hope, for humanity's sake, that the crisis in Gaza is over long before November, and hopefully sooner than that. But yeah, it's definitely the kind of thing that you need to be, I don't know, concerned about. But I would certainly say to the same people who are voting undeclared in the primary that when it comes to the general election, if they think that Joe Biden is bad on Gaza, wait till they see what Donald Trump is willing to do there. I mean, he would give them, those mothers of all bombs that are the largest bombs we have that are not nuclear, and drop them freely all over Gaza without thinking twice about it. He has proven himself time and time again that the answer to the Palestinian question in Israel should be solved not between the Palestinians and the Israelis, but by the Israelis and other people who excluding the Palestinians who don't, in his view, need to have their viewpoints heard at all. So the contrast is pretty stark.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. Priscilla, what do you think? Priscilla's thinking.
I know. The whole Israel-Palestine thing is definitely worth watching. I think one of the places where it starts to get difficult, even among the younger voters, is whether or not they are protesting out of a sense of anti-Semitism, which isn't actually happening, or are they protesting out of a sense of anti-nationalism, which is what is actually happening? And so what ends up happening in a lot of these debates is that you have the faction that are pro-Palestinian independence. Is at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about the independence of Palestine. And then you have the folks who say that that perspective is anti-Semitic when what the view really is anti-Israel. And the reasons behind being anti-Israel, for one thing, are not anti-Semitic, but also, you know, run, far more complicatedly than saying that it's about, you know, Arabs versus Jews. And so I think it's worth any of our politicians paying attention when there is a protest vote along those lines, so that they can be like, oh, yeah, this is actually something important, and then we need to be careful about. But on the other hand, dancing around it at the presidential standpoint also complicates things, because you can't say that you're going to be pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, and then not support the Ukraine. So it's, again, one of those, like, you can't have it both ways kind of situation. So I think it's good for the politicians to dance around it carefully, but they can't ignore it either.
Brooklyn?
Well, I'm chortling with glee that Mitch McConnell is going to not be the leader of anything. I would have a modicum of respect for him had he voted to impeach Trump. But in any event, regarding the very real crisis in Palestine and in Gaza, rather than the manufactured crisis at the southern U.S. border. Yeah, I was thinking about, Priscilla, what you said about the moment one says anything that is anti what Israel's policies are, people leap into action and accuse one of being anti-Semitic, which is not at all. It's like saying the moment anybody questions American foreign policy that involves the American military, which happened to me repeatedly when I questioned the Iraq War at the time when it was just starting. Everybody accused me of not supporting our troops, and it had nothing to do with that. And I was being told I was being a traitor. I mean, Palestine, I mean, their lives are just as valuable as anybody else's, and I don't understand why it always has to be an either or. You're either pro this, and if you're pro this, you have to be against that. I don't see why anyone, including the president, can't very carefully and diplomatically be for the people of Israel and the people of Palestine and the people of Ukraine simultaneously. And I mean, one may have to do that very delicately, but that's what diplomats are for. I mean, experienced diplomats who know what they're doing, not diplomats who say to their leader, yeah, whatever you want. I just don't see that negotiations and international relations have to be distributive in this manner. I don't see why they can't be integrative as well. Even if that has to be like two-track diplomacy, but then of course the problem with that is that one has to sell one thing to one's public and then do another thing in private, and that of course then creates the enemy. I'm aware that Putin seems to spend a lot of his time animadverting against the United States, and he seems to feel that the United States in particular and people in the West spend every waking second thinking about how to destroy Russia. And that's all we think about, is how we're going to destroy Russia and the Russian people. And I doubt very many people in the United States, beyond those involved with Russia foreign policy, even give more than a passing thought, if any thought at all, to the Russian people or to Putin, unless you're an academic or you have something like the news or something like that. People don't think about that. They're thinking about their own lives, and they're worrying about the election, if they're even thinking about that. So and it's very interesting to me that that Trump supports Putin, and that now he's got the Republicans and Tucker Carlson and all these people publicly supporting Putin, when the line that Putin is sharing, and that apparently many Russians seem to feel as well, is that every waking second, the West and the US are very busy trying to figure out how to destroy them entirely.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
let's face it. If that was true, it would have been done by now.
oh, of course,
So-
but people don't think about that.
So my last comment in the last 2 minutes that we have, I've noticed, of course, Brooklyn's dog is always on camera with her sticking his nose in, and I've watched Scott here petting Mud throughout the entire thing, and there was something I saw yesterday that was kind of heart-wrenching. It was on The Daily Show. Jon Stewart, his dog died. Dipper. He got him at a shelter in New York. The dog had 3 legs because he had been hit. And this dog was, like to many of us that owns dogs, really an important part to his life. And it was really a heartfelt, I mean, he cried on air, a heartfelt tribute to this dog.
It was, for sure.
It definitely. And I've always said, someday I hope to be as good a human as my dog thinks I am. I do not know who said that, but whoever did, brilliant statement. Brilliant statement. So for all us dog owners out there, if you have an opportunity, it's on YouTube. And if you can keep from crying, good luck to you, because it is absolutely, that was humanity. That was true humanity. And maybe we need just a little bit more of that in our lives. So
Everybody
guys,
should have dogs. Yeah.
everybody should have a dog. I don't care. I know Priscilla's got a dog.
Who's the only president of late who didn't have a dog?
Yes. Ye who shall not be named. Probably because dogs even understand. Although Biden's dogs aren't being very good boys, biting all the, all the Secret Service people. So you got to kind of look at it like that. But I really do.
Yeah, but they're protecting the family.
They're protecting the family. Yes.
They must be very good people to need protection from everybody else.
So yeah. So to Jon Stewart, our sympathies. Dipper passed away after so many years. And as he said, may we all have a good dog. But yeah, did you see that, Scott? The Jon Stewart thing?
I absolutely, yeah.
Oh, God almighty.
And it got me, I've had them, I think I've lost 4 dogs, and it's never a good day, and some of them are worse than others. And it just, my dog Cody it's good when you can get the dog that you need for the times that you're there. And Cody was a wild man, but he was so protective. He used to just sit outside this hill right outside my window here on a stump and just look around all the time. He would just keep the family safe. And if anybody came up, our driveway is a 1/4 mile long. Nobody could get up that driveway without him standing in front of them until he knew it was okay and they could come up. Yeah. And he was just the best. And my first dog was the one that taught me how to love, taught me how to accept love.
Yep.
Which I did not know how to do until I met this dog and had this dog. And Mud is very affectionate. Doesn't really know anything about personal space.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, Mud has no. Well,
I have to hop for a meeting.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. You can let me know when you can, Priscilla, and then I'll add it in.
Cool.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, I mean, it hit us because, of course, Sherlock 16, or German Shorthair Pointer, and this is probably his last year, but our Anatolian Shepherd Libby, who's 14, when we got her, they always said an Anatolian shepherd picks a human and you're their human, and it's not like a pack. And I did everything in my power to make Linda the human. Well, she decided quite differently. And even Linda said, when that dog goes, I'm not going to be worth shit for probably a month or two. But yeah, I mean, she always, as we're doing this, she's right here at the floor, never leaves my feet. And she's demanding and needy and the whole thing. And she's 140 pounds of Anatolian shepherd. But I watched that and was like, oh my God almighty. So I think that's where we'll end this episode, with a little bit of humanity, and we'll see all of you again next time. So that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this week's episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium offering social issue solutions to NGOs and international government agencies through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research. We'd also like to thank our podcast partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Podkite, who does all our analytics, iHeartRadio, where people get their music and podcasts, Apple iTunes, the largest source of music and podcasts on the internet, Spotify, the most popular source for the Nova Society. The Nova Society is available on all these and other quality platforms mentioned in our description. We'd like to thank our listeners. Without you, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a comment, a question, or would like to be a guest on the Nova Society, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. Always remember, the power of society is knowledge. So for Dr. Scott Gershworth, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Be well, and we hope to see you again next time.